Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. This morning, Ralph Yall, the young the young boy really, who was shot at the wrong house, will finally get some justice, or at least appears to be finally getting some justice as the shooter will be going to trial. Also, Clarence Thomas finally disclosed his gifts, and he says that one of the excuses he made was, well, the neighborhood his mother lives in is just ravaged with drug abusers and drug users, and uh, we need to do something about it. But she still lives in the same house, by the way. We'll talk about that. Proud Boys gets 17. One of the leaders of the Proud Boys gets 17 years. Are they feeling today about their actions on January 6th? Wonder if they would ever tell you the truth on that. And Georgia Governor Kemp has stepped into the Trump fray, saying that he absolutely will not uh, get rid of Fonnie Willis, the district attorney, who was nothing to obstruct that prosecution. And by the way, Judge ruled yesterday that the Trump trial in Georgia will be live streamed. And remember when Cardi B tossed a microphone at someone for throwing water or some object on her a few weeks ago? Well, 50 Cent did the same thing, but he's saying it was totally accidental. We'll talk about that. Also, Michael Jackson would have been 64 years old had he lived. Now, artificial intelligence is showing us what he would have looked like today. And some of the images appear very much plausible. We'll discuss that this morning as well. But first, the white homeowner accused of wounding a black teen who went to the wrong Kansas City address in April will stand trial for the shooting, a Missouri judge ruled yesterday. The ruling came after a preliminary hearing in which a dozen witnesses testified and multiple exhibits, I should say, were admitted into evidence, including 911 calls from neighbors as well as the defendant, Ralph Yarl, the teenager who was allegedly shot twice by 84-year-old Andrew Lester, also testified at the hearing. Lester's next court appearance is scheduled for September 20th, but on the night of April 13th, he shot Ralph, who was 16 at the time, in the head and arm after he rang the man's doorbell. Police and Ralph's family said the teenager was trying to pick up his siblings but went to the wrong address. The homeowner opened fire through a locked glass door without any words exchanged because he supposedly thought that Ralph was trying to break in and was supposedly scared to death due to the boy's size, according to statements in a probable cause document released by police. In a 911 call played in court yesterday, Lester told a dispatcher he shot Ralph and that he believed the teen was trying to break in. Lester pleaded not guilty in April to the charges of first degree assault and armed criminal action before being released on a $200,000 bond. This wrong address shooting is now something else that people of color have to worry about in this nation. I mean, we know that there was also a white woman who was shot driving into the wrong driveway, but this is a situation that's predominantly, as we always say, predominantly or disproportionately affects people of color, particularly African Americans. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. This guy was behind a locked screen door, and Ralph went to the front door. He didn't go to the back door. He wasn't peering through a window or anything like that. And yet he said he was scared and decided to shoot. We'll, we will see. We will see how the wheels of justice in America turns in this case. And speaking of wheels of justice, folks, Clarence Thomas. I know we always got to take a breath when we say that name. And if you if you haven't eaten yet and you heard that name, I apologize. But earlier this year, we learned that the conservative Supreme Court justice, whom a lot of black folks refer to as Uncle Thomas, secretly sold his childhood home, which his mother still lives in, to billionaire Harlan Crow in 2014. The justice was a one-third owner of the property at the time, but despite the obvious ethical concerns of a Supreme Court justice doing business with a billionaire, The sale was never disclosed and only came to light thanks to ProPublica's reporting. Today, in light of Thomas's most recent financial disclosures, which, wouldn't you know it, subtly details all sorts of ties to Harlan Crow, the Supreme Court Justice's lawyer released a statement defending the sale of the home, among other things. The lawyer says in 2014, Harlan Crow, a longtime friend of Justice and Mrs. Thomas, visited Savannah with Justice Thomas. The statement from Elliot S. Burke reads, Mr. Crow witnessed firsthand how the neighborhood was blighted and dangerous with derelicts, drug users, and junkies, notably in the house next to the justice's mother and in the other houses on her street. So Thomas who joined the Supreme Court in 1991, meaning that in 2014, when his mother was still living in this junkie-filled crack neighborhood, that it was still she was still there. She was still blighted. Unbelievable. He's been one of the most powerful men for more than 22 years, and this just riled him up a bit that all these years later, right? Well, it comes amidst all the disclosures that the justice has made. Finally, after some heat, lots of heat from Democrat lawmakers and, of course, ethics experts who said that this guy should have long resigned his seat on the bench. He should have long been removed from his seat on the bench, which has not and apparently will not happen. Clarence Thomas has heard cases that his billionaire friends, and not only heard cases, but has actually rendered judgment on cases that his billionaire friends who have taken care of him and given him a lifestyle that many people dream of. And he still always ruled in their favor, too. There's no indication, no research has been concluded that he has ever ruled against them. Either way, he should have recused himself for any instances where they have come before the court. He did not. And we saw that the new judge, Ketanji Brown Jackson, last year recused herself from the affirmative action case because of her ties to the University of North Carolina, which and her ties to Harvard as well. And she properly recused herself despite the devastating ruling there. Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas. Well, uh, uh, who said this? The chickens have come home to roost. Joe Biggs, a Proud Boys leader, has been convicted of seditious conspiracy. The government said he served as an instigator and a leader during the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. He got 17 years, although prosecutors wanted 30 years. The judge settled on 17, and these are federal years, folks. So they mean that 17 years means 17 years on the federal side. There's no halftime off for good behavior or anything like that. It is among the longest sentences in the Capitol riot cases. The record is the 18-year sentence given to Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rose, also convicted of seditious conspiracy after prosecutors in that case sought 25 years in federal prison. The government had, as we said, wanted Biggs to do 30 to 33 years. He's an Army veteran who sustained a head injury in Iraq and then was a correspondent for the conspiracy website InfoWars. Prosecutors argued that he was a, quote, vocal leader and influential proponent of the group's shift toward political violence and that he used his outsized public profile and his military experience as he led a revolt against the U.S. government in an effort to stop the peaceful transfer of power. U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly, who handed down Biggs' sentence, ruled that in the hearing that Biggs' tearing down of a fence between police and rioters qualified him for a terrorism sentencing enhancement sought by the prosecutors. He said destroying the fence was a deliberate, meaningful step that contributed to the disruption of the electoral vote count occurring in the Capitol, according to the judge. Power 96 says those Proud Boys were crying in court yesterday. They will come out of prison as Proud Girls. Power 96 strikes again on a Friday morning. Yeah, and they may get some company, right? They may get a lot more company and the type of company that they probably would never have expected as former President Donald Trump faces 91 felony count. 91. I mean, mobsters and serial killers haven't faced that many counts that I can recall. 91 that can land them in federal prison for and state prison for more than 800 years. The twice impeached, 4 times indicted Trump, who early this year was found responsible for the sexual assault of an author slash journalist, is in hot water. His trial is going to be live streamed. The Georgia trial is going to be live streamed if all goes according to plan. And there's a lot of Republicans who don't want it to go according to plan. One of them, by the way, and perhaps most important at this moment, is the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. Georgia's governor, Brian Kemp, yesterday outwardly rejected a plea from state Republicans to kick Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis off the case following Trump's criminal indictment for election interference, marking a blow to Trump as he pleads not guilty to all charges. In a press conference in Georgia, Governor Kemp said he would refuse to hold a special session of the state legislature to remove Willis, who Trump has repeatedly called out in a series of tirades, tantrums, and other things on his social media platform. He accused her of being out to, quote, get Trump. Kemp, who Trump has also berated for refusing to support his baseless election fraud claims, said a session to oust Fonnie Willis would, quote, ignore current Georgia law and directly interfere with the proceedings of a separate but equal branch of government. Shouldn't he be talking with the dude down in Florida, DeSantis? I mean, come on. This is 101, right? Some Republican lawmakers have pushed for a special session to impeach Fonnie Willis, an uphill battle because a conviction would require a two-thirds vote in the state Senate, and the GOP's majority falls short of that threshold. So perhaps Governor Kemp figured he had nothing to lose by saying, I'm not going along with this because they don't have the votes to do it anyway. It's always something, right? What is that? The tempest in the teapot type thing. A group of Georgia Republicans had also pushed for Fonnie Willis's removal through a commission that could sanction or oust a prosecutor determined to be neglecting their responsibilities using a state law that Kemp signed in May. Kemp said, however, that he's seen no evidence that Willis's actions in the case warrant action by the Oversight Commission, calling a special session, quote, not feasible, and saying it, quote, may ultimately prove to be unconstitutional, as if that has stopped these rabble rousers before. And that's Power 96. So I think Kemp realizes too that that bill that he signed is not, uh, he says unconditional. I thought he said unconstitutional or constitutional. Either way, it's a bogus bill that got through somehow a Republican-led Senate over there. But we will see, because Trump's trial in Georgia, if it does indeed take place in Fulton County, will be live streamed. And just as a, I don't know if it's coincidence or you want to say, or a by the way, um, there were 2 stabbings in the Fulton County jail yesterday. Um, and that was interesting because that's where Trump and his alleged co-conspirators were, at least for about 30 minutes last week. Um, really interesting. Unconstitutional is what Power 96. That's what I thought. All right. let's get some a little bit lighter stuff here on this Friday, the 1st of September. Can you believe we always say time flies? What's a better word for flying, or a more a better way to say time flies because it's doing more than flying these days. I mean, we are already in the last quarter of 2023, September 1st. Kids are back in school. People are doing people things, whatever that might be. I was in New York last week and Times Square was looking like New Year's. Just amazing. We'll be in Washington on Tuesday, where it's always an interesting place to be. Something's always going on in the nation's capital, whether it be on the political in the political arena or outside the political arena. There's always something going on. We'll see because we'll be visiting both the White House and we'll be visiting um, the Washington Nationals Park and other things that are going on there. That I'm getting these assignments. I'm trying to figure out. So remember when Cardi B threw her microphone and rocked that girl in the head? Well, most people probably don't have getting struck in the forehead with a microphone at a 50 Cent concert on their 2023 card. But one woman who attended 50's recent Los Angeles show is checking it off her card during the rapper's performance at was it Crypto or Crypto.com arena on Wednesday. 50 Cent tossed his mic into an offstage production area in frustration after reportedly being handed non-functioning equipment. Let's be very clear, is what a statement from his team said. As I told Los Angeles police this afternoon, my client, Curtis Jackson, would never intentionally strike anyone with a microphone. That's attorney Scott Lehman. Anyone saying something different, he said, doesn't have all the facts and is misinformed. The LAPD has opened a battery investigation into the matter, but similar to Cardi B, it is not expected, although it was two different jurisdictions, but not expected that any charges will come out of this. But in a video from the concert, 50 can be seen throwing a microphone off stage before handing another off to a team member while rapper YG kept the music going. Shortly after, he was handed another microphone that was evidently also not working. He threw that one off to the side as well, but with far more force than the previous one. The rapper then looked back toward the area while walking away before turning his attention back to the audience. A battery report, as we said, was filed, and LAPD says they are still gathering information and content shared by none other than TMC. The woman is shown to have a gash in her forehead where the microphone made contact. I just want them to check my brain, she says in the video. Like, am I going to be okay? I just want to make sure it ain't nothing bleeding, is what she said. Comments on one of the videos showing the mic throwing incident also confirmed that a woman was hit by the flying object. And again, Power 96 says, I smell a lawsuit. Yeah, I mean, we haven't heard the last of this, like, we certainly haven't heard the last of the Cardi B incident either. Tossing the microphone, tossing whatever. It's interesting because folks are just tossing whatever they want onto the stage, right? Throwing objects at performers and things of that nature, and it's not to excuse either Cardi or 50 Cent. They have to have better self-control given their status. And given the fact that they are certainly easy targets for somebody to come after them in a 6, 7, or even 8-figure lawsuit. So, and while they may ultimately win the lawsuits, they may lose them too. It's still going to cost them, um, you know, time, aggravation, lawyer fees, and things of that nature. So, yeah, I do smell a lawsuit too, but you know, let's just go and write the check. This is what I say. It's just go write the check. Cardi B should go write the check. 50 Cent should go write the check. Go send some flowers with the check and say, hey, you know what? Well, in Cardi B's case, she's not gonna apologize. She felt like the girl violated her. In 50 Cent's case, uh, a little bit different. He was not targeting anyone, just got frustrated that his, staff kept giving him mics that didn't work, and so he tossed it into a production area. These things happen. They happen. Sean D. Harris is watching from the great city of Mount Vernon, New York. He's watching on LinkedIn. Aunt Pam is watching. My sister is watching. My wife is watching. How about that? I think everybody's watching to keep me aligned this morning. That's what's going on, Power 96. They don't realize that you do that every morning. So, this morning, it's been more than 14 years since the tragic death of the king of pop, Michael Jackson, and now artificial intelligence has revealed what he might look like today. It's so interesting. The only issue, and here's one of the images, right? The only issue is that it's hard. It has to be difficult because Michael changed his looks so many times. His love of plastic surgery was, challenged by not many. I mean, Joan Rivers and others, but this young man, he died at the age of 50. Um, loved some plastic surgery. He died of an accidental propofol overdose prescribed by his physician, Conrad Murray, who later served 2 years behind bars after his death was ruled a homicide. His last words were a demand for, quote, milk. And that's the code word Michael used for propofol, the drug that eventually killed him. The star's autopsy revealed a series of grisly secrets that the King of Pop held from the world, from his tattooed lips and forehead to his wig, which was attached just a few strands of hair. He suffered from frontal balding and was totally without hair except for patches of peach fuzz on his scarred scalp. He had begun wearing a wig way back in 1984. Many would remember the infamous 1984 Pepsi commercial when his natural hair caught fire during a stunt for an advertisement, leaving him with second and third degree burns. He looks in the photos, the AI photos, he looks gaunt underneath a pair of brown aviator sunglasses in one snap, while another shows him sporting a wide brimmed hat with visible wrinkles around his lips and eyes. Sadly, in every single image, Michael looks glum, staring at the camera with big, sad eyes rimmed with black coal. In one snap, his lips have turned a deep gray, while his dark eyebrows are thin. His famous jawline seems to have widened, with age creating furrows at his forehead and around his cheekbones. Michael's death was certainly a tragic one, shocking the music world, and he weighed less than 100 pounds at death with nothing but partially dissolved pills in his stomach. He had eaten just one small meal per day for months. His knees and shins were covered in mysterious bruises and cuts covered the star's back, perhaps an indication of a recent fall. Next to his bed, where he died, investigators found a sealed bottle of urine along with boxes of catheters, disposable needles, and an oxygen tank. Marks of his plastic surgeries scarred his body, with one person close to him saying that he was in, quote, terminal decline for years until he died in 2009. One insider said he was skin and bone, his hair had fallen out, and he had been eating nothing but pills when he died. One of the most tragic stories in the history of pop music, in the history of popular culture. Perhaps the greatest entertainer ever to live, certainly the most electric entertainer, Michael Jackson. And this is what AI said he would look like today. I know his fans certainly would love to know what he would look like, but more importantly, they would love to have him with them today. You see all the big concerts and Beyonce and Taylor Swift and tomorrow actually Aerosmith is kicking off their farewell tour here locally, and Springsteen and the E Street Band. Madonna's trying to get her tour together. Boy, wouldn't it have been amazing to see Michael Jackson in 2023 on a stage doing what he does best? We got a lot of comments on that. Michelle Madison says it looks like all of that surgery affected his age, and it certainly, and that's the thing. Now, why Michael decided to have these surgeries. There are several different stories. I mean, including the fact that at one point he said that he had only two, but then of course we came to find out it was probably could put a couple of zeros behind the two that he had mentioned way back when he spoke to Oprah in 1992. But um, black folks, I mean, black folks in this, we talked about this a little bit before. You don't need it. That's why that saying "black don't crack" exists. You just and it becomes more than it must be, and we gotta have Power 96. We gotta have a discussion about this. We gotta have a discussion um, about the real discussion about mental health and plastic surgery because it has to be a mental health thing, right? Must be. Mike V says, "Do you ever worry?" He's asking me, "Do I ever worry about AI coming for the black press by trying to mimic our culture and ability to write articles?" Absa, I want to say absolutely. I wanted to put another adjective between absa and lutely, but eh, Barrington's not here. Um, but yes, absolutely, they're doing it already. I was totally, and I talked about this before. I was totally freaked out, disappointed. While I understood, but disappointed at an NMPA conference last year. One of our publishers produced a front page photos and articles totally done by AI, and I just thought, this is absolutely horrifying. And the only thing that we can say about that, Mike V, is that while AI can perhaps capture some writings and do some photos and articles, they cannot replace that journalist on the street. There's horrible news out of Scranton, Pennsylvania this morning. The newspaper there, owned by a family for 60 years or whatever. A just a phenomenal um, backbone of the Scranton Wilkes-Barre community. The Times Tribune the family has sold the newspaper um, to this group who has this penchant for getting rid of everybody and using AI and doing things of that nature. Um, that was a newspaper, I will say, put everything on the table. It rejuvenated my career. I was there for what, 5 years, 6 years, and that family, the Lynette family, as generous and as compassionate as you can get. And they sold off all their properties except they have a radio station. They have the building, the iconic Scranton Times building that sits in the heart of downtown Scranton that they did not sell. Um, but the printing press, it was amazing because they had the printing press there, old school, but it was such a wonderful experience there. No better experience than at the Times Tribune there in Scranton, PA. Anybody who's been through there, if you hear anybody with a bad word to say about it, that's because they are disgruntled. They have no clue of what they're talking about. But this was this paper. I wish we could take. When I left Scranton, I could have taken that paper with me because it was just well run. You had the late great Larry Beaupre as the managing editor, John Murphy, assistant managing editor. Great columnists remain there. Chris Kelly, who, if you have never read a Chris Kelly column, you have lost out on a lot of great journalism. Go back, go to the Times Tribune. I know they're under a paywall, but see how you can get Chris Kelly's blogs and articles. There's no better columnists, humor and everything else mixed in with all of the seriousness. Um, but that is the fate of newspapers. So yeah, Mike V, it is we have been able to somehow weather the internet storm where the web, the World Wide Web, has taken our stuff. Is the depleted newspapers have put newspapers out of business. um, Now all these citizen journalists, these bloggers, and all this fake news, we've been able to withstand that storm. Now it remains to be seen as to whether or not we will be able to withstand the AI storm. And that is really the truth. And Power 96 says that he would rather be old, big, and ugly before he receives plastic surgery. What's your wife going to think about that, Power 96? You're always talking about your wife. What's she going to think about that? Well, anyway, we're going to have a show one day, folks. I'm going to see to it. We're going to have a discussion with some experts on this whole plastic surgery issue. Um, I mean, Lionel Richie, what are you doing, Lionel Richie? It's so many of them. And then you see the divas, the real true, like Dinah Ross. I don't see any plastic surgery there. I mean, she's like, you know what? This is who I am. Gladys Knight. This is who I am. Come on now. This is horrible. And after what happened to Michael and all of the addiction to plastic surgery, you would think that it would be a wake up call for some. Maybe perhaps it has been a wake up call for some. I don't know who they are, but we continue to see more and more of people looking to. We was in Times Square, as I mentioned, and there was billboards, all these different stars. I won't say their names yet. I'll save it for the show. Who are otherwise good looking people. And come on, whether you loved him or hate him or didn't like him, it was hard to hate Michael Jackson, right? At some point. But women went crazy. I was dating a girl, we dating, and she writing love letters to Michael Jackson. It's amazing. I mean, there were women who were head over heels thinking he was like the greatest looking thing ever. There were guys who wanted to look like Michael Jackson. There was no need for it. He probably had a need for his scalp because of the Pepsi thing that through no fault of his own. But look at the various faces of Michael Jackson. And you get to pick the era, which is interesting in itself. Power 96 says, as long as the bills are paid, his wife better be happy. I think it takes a little bit more than that. Thanks. But thanks anyway, folks. This is Friday. It's a long holiday weekend. Folks, you know what happens on holidays. So be careful, be safe. And we hope that all you'll be back next week for another edition of Let It Be Known. Have a great weekend.